we have a team of publishing managers that actually manage a portfolio of studios, like 10 or 15 studios. They work with the studio and they will think, okay, so am I killing the game now, or am I actually iterating on the game? But they have to think about what is the long-term vision for the game, because our belief is that you can very quickly see if a game is worth iterating or not. And basically, an extra iteration is a lost opportunity to actually build a new game.
Thibault, Voodoo famously tests 2,000 prototypes a year. You work with 200 different studios. What separates a top-performing team from the rest?
There's no magic recipe. All the success stories we have at Voodoo differ. But, we're starting to see some patterns, actually, that come out of these really good teams. So the first thing is they're usually very lean. It's very small teams, which means that they're usually founder-led, by like 1 or 2 founders that are very much involved in the product. They could be lead devs, lead designers, or actually both on the product. They're very creative. They're not looking to build copycats. They're really looking for innovation and build products that, they're passionate about. They're very hungry. So they're real entrepreneurs that really want to make, the next big game, the next big hit. And they have very high standards, both for themselves and for the people they hire, meaning that, they will never ship a game that they're not happy about. They're not happy with the way it feels, the way it plays, the way it looks. And that's also what they expect from the people they hire and from the publisher they work with, which is, the case with us. And one thing is that we really try to avoid actually the teams that, jump from like publisher to publisher, just looking for prototyping deals. We're really looking for people that see us as partners and not, as clients when I actually work on prototypes, really trying to build this next big game with us.
Got it. So lean, founder-led, creative, hungry, high standards of the games they build, and committed to a single partner.
Exactly.
Where do you find studios like that?
All around the world.
Really?
Honestly, that's really the beauty of it. We've had great teams all around. If you take our latest hit games, like, Blockjam was made by a team in the US, Body Up. Cup Heroes was built by 501 out of Ukraine. We also have teams in Turkey, like PubTrain, Rivy, and others. We're now expanding into China and Vietnam. So it's really all across the globe, but they all have something in common, which is they're great entrepreneurs and they're, very passionate people that really want to build the next big hit for the market.
Hands-on builders, Eastern Europe, Asia.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, we come from Western Europe initially. Yeah. That's where the market was initially. We've had a lot of success with, French studios, British studios, also in the Nordics, in Spain and everything. But now we're really seeing a shift towards Eastern Europe. Has always been here, obviously, and it's still, a powerhouse. But we're seeing Asia as an emerging force as well, and really trying to enter this Western market. You see all the 4X and everything on the market, but they're really getting into hybrid as well. Habi was the first one, and now all of the studios we kind of work with. And yeah, that's it mostly.
Fascinating. One question just about the leanness.
Yeah.
What is lean?
It can range from like 1 to 9 people, I would say, in the team. So you still have, a bunch of solo devs actually that work on their own at their place and that ship like, a game every 2 months. Guys that are very, very talented. Just last week, we launched a game made by a guy out of Moldova that's alone and been working with us for like 5 years now. So that's like the small teams, and the big teams would be like 8 or 9 people. The example here is like 501, work with on Cup Heroes, for example. They have 2 founders and then a bigger team, mostly developers that help them work on more prototypes. But the founders are always involved on all the protos that actually are shipped. And I think that's the most important part is actually this. We want the people that actually work on the games to have skin in the game because we want them to, push the boundaries and really make the extra mile to make sure that the game is going to be that success.
Yeah. So prove it with the software, not with the presentation.
Yeah, exactly.
Last time I was here, we talked. Gabriel talked about 1,000 prototypes you do a year. This year is only 2,000.
Yeah.
So how do you go from 2,000 to what you soft launch about 40 games?
Yeah, around this.
Yeah, you're a hit factory, but the percentage is really low. So you're really great at killing games.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about this process of 2,000 prototypes. Like, what's the first thing that you look in a prototype? What's the next phase, the following phase, until it reaches to one of those 40 games that are actually launched?
Sure. I mean, first, I think we need to take a step back. You know, we come from happy casual initially. Back in happy casual, we used to test 5 to 10,000 games per year. So we kind of founded that model, happy casual, in 2016, as Gab was saying last time. And back then, quality was very secondary. You know, the focus was on marketability and stickiness, and you would really look at just the metrics. You don't really care about the way the game looks, the way it feels. If people stay, and actually it's pretty cheap to get people in the game, it kind of works. Now we do test, as you were saying, 1.5K or 2,000 prototypes per year, but it really changed in the way, we look at games and what we expect from these games. We really raised our expectations for studios and the support we also bring.
I'm going to go into details. Because I'm too stupid to understand high level. So let's say me and my partner are small developers out of the most northern part of Europe. And I come up with a game that is, let's say, putting ice into a glass so it doesn't spill, something like that. A new iteration on the sword game. How many levels do I have to have for it to be a prototype?
First, I mean, we're always going to look at like one level to start with, so we're going to play test it and see if it works like this. So we won't require you to have too much art or anything in the game. It doesn't need to be refined. But I would say the first version, you need to play test it and make sure that actually it kind of works. But this is not tested in the market. So we're not pushing it to players. And we're not really looking at, stats, because you might get a false negative on engagement because the game is too repetitive and there's not enough variety into the game itself. When we have this, we'll ask you to basically build 30 to 50 levels to make sure that you introduce 1 or 2 mechanics that are different, and see how people react to these variations that they might be in the gameplay. And based on this, we'll loop the levels afterwards, potentially with some kind of adaptive difficulty that comes in to make sure we have more than 50 levels in content before we actually test the game. And then we actually test the game in the US initially, and we have a set of metrics we look at to see if the game has proper potential or not. It's kind of a formula that we refine every 6 months based on the learnings we have, which takes into account primarily engagement metrics. So cohorted playtime, day 1 retention, day 3 retention for the first test. And while CPI is still a factor, it really carries less weight than it used to in this formula. So there are a number of metrics that are squared, some others square roots. That's the case for CPI because it's still a factor, but really less important than the rest. And based on this test, this will give us a first hint. Should we spend time in this game or should we kill it from the get-go? And if we decide to spend time in the game, then we'll think about, is there a vision on how we can build this game to create a lasting experience for the players, but also a way to actually monetize this game in the long run? And if the answer is yes to this kind of quantitative question, do we meet the gating process with the formula and everything? And do we have a vision that could work on the game? Then we decide to actually invest some time in the game with the studio. And then we tried focusing really on retention in this early stage, trying to lift day 7, day 14, and day 30 retention, still in the prototyping phase.
Fascinating. Okay, I'll just summarize everything. I have the first idea, and the first test is more of a quality test. It's a gut feeling test. So you just basically, quality in the sense you play the game and you can see if there's enough quality here or not.
Yeah, you play with the studio, and honestly, pretty often what we see from the top studios is that we will have the same assessment as the studio. So if that's what I was saying, it's founder-led and the people are passionate about the product and they have high standards, they will build a game, they will test it, and usually the best ones will say, okay, it's not ready or just it's not working. I'll just go for something else.
Yeah, because a good studio means that they have a good taste, and they're not going to use you as a tester. It's like, well, I made a software. You tell me if it's good or not. It's like, come on, guys, this is your job. Like, you have to be the first one to tell me that it's good. So then you move in like, oh, yeah, we agree. This is good. Let's put in some levels, 30 to 50, and some kind of end game, leaderboard, endless level, whatever it is. It just doesn't stop. Then it goes testing into the US with engagement and CPI. So there's no monetization when it goes to a first testing. There's no ROAS. Nothing. So here you're just basically looking at how people stick in the game, and you mute because you invests into creative new ideas, usually the CPIs are probably pretty low because it's a new take on something. So
we hope it is. We hope it is. It's high by our standards, I would say, which are more from half casual back in the days. But I guess it's pretty low for the industry because we're always looking for something that's fresh and new, and obviously we're not going to compete, face to face with like World Match or Candy Crush.
Exactly, and also it's hard to know what the CPIs will be at scale. So
exactly.
It's kind of like it's just a starting point, maybe.
It's a starting point, but really our view nowadays is that CPI is not the key to it. So if you make a game that's has a huge retention, for example, and people stay for like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years in the game, you will find a way to actually monetize these people.
Of course.
And I think that's really the kind of shift we've done, which is it used to be half casual, and then you scale the game, and the moment the LTV is below the CPI, you can you stop scaling the game. Nowadays, we really try to build LTVs that keep growing and keep progressing in the future, allowing us to scale the games further. And that's really what we're looking for, is building these games that actually can last for years.
Today's podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer, inviting you to dive into their new first-of-its-kind report, The State of Creative Optimization 2025 edition. It's not about how to make creatives. It's about understanding what makes users actually stop scrolling and what emotional and psychological triggers drive performance. Based on over 1 million creative variations and nearly $2.5 billion in ad spend, the insights in the report will help you develop a winning creative strategy. Check out the link in the podcast description below, or go to appsflyer.com and search The State of Creative Optimization. That's appsflyer.com. Attention app and game developers, are you ready to unlock the secrets behind the world's top performing apps and games? With Sensor Tower, you get the ultimate competitive edge, whether it's breaking into new markets, fine-tuning your UA strategies, or boosting monetization. Dive into data like never before, track global trends across app stores, analyze market-leading in-app purchase and in-app ad strategies, and benchmark your performance with real-time insight. The best part, Sensor Tower doesn't just deliver data, it helps you turn it into action. With intuitive tools and expert analysis, it's everything you need to make smarter, faster decisions. Thousands of app and game studios, from indie creators to global giants, trust Sensor Tower to help them win. So why not you? Start your free trial today at sensortower.com. That is sensortower.com.
And then once that is done, it moves into the first real go, no-go gate. And at that point, you said you're going to discuss the vision and how the game will grow, what its potential. Who is in those conversations? Is it your internal team, or is it the game team? Is it you together? Like, how do you come up? Because now you're getting from software to presentation phase.
Yeah. So it's still pretty early. So after the first test, usually we have a team of publishing managers that actually manage a portfolio of studios, like 10 or 15 studios, each of them, and these guys are responsible for taking these decisions, right? When they work with the studio and they will think, okay, so am I killing the game now, or am I actually iterating on the game? But they have to think about what is the long-term vision for the game with the studio, because myself and other managers in the team will come to actually challenge the publishing manager and the studio on their decision to actually iterate and work further on the game. Because our belief is that you can very quickly see if a game is worth iterating or not. And basically, an extra iteration is a lost opportunity to actually build a new game and actually find a way to actually create a concept. And that's always the piece of advice we give to studios, is to not over-iterate, because they will actually lose time and lose an opportunity to actually build an extra prototype or a new game that actually could be the one that's big, by focusing on ones where, honestly, from the get-go, you see that there's no chance of actually getting there.
That's a fascinating part, because, as I said, like the key element of your business and overall in the business of hyper casual is killing a lot of ideas so that you get to the best ones.
Yeah.
how and it's clear to kill a game that doesn't have outstanding metrics off the bat because you have so many versions.
Yeah.
But can you talk about a case where you've had a game that is very on the edge? Like, how do you go through that decision? Like, it's good, it's not excellent, but you think it could get excellent. Is there a cut where it's not excellent, it's out? Or how do you make that decision to maybe push a little bit? Like, people have some kind of a belief in the studio as well as in the idea.
I think it really depends on the vision for the game as well, and how the publishing manager and the studio actually share that vision with us. These kind of decisions we make, as a group within Voodoo, but also discussing with the studio. Do we think there is something to be done? So the vision is going to be built with these guys because they own the game initially and they own the vision and how it should be. I think when it's on the edge, what we will think about is, do we see an opportunity in the market? Because this is an untapped opportunity. So if you're on the edge, but competition on this type of game is huge, there's very little chance you're going to make it, right? Because you have a game that's just not as good as the others in the market, metrics-wise. And so you're never going to build a leader against these kind of incumbents that are big on the market. For example, we've had a number of titles that are on the edge, using the Match 3D gameplay that you see in Match Factory, Triple Match, and these kind of things. We never launched one to this date because we never really got the metrics where we feel, we can compete against these guys and build a leader in the market. We're not here to be number 5 and number 6 with very thin margins. We're here to actually build a leader. When on the other hand, you actually have a game where actually there might be an opportunity in the market because you don't have strong leaders in there, then actually we'll put the extra resources. And we see that, there might be something to be done here because it's worth actually taking a risk because we could create a subgenre or create a market itself. Block Jam, for example, we launched like 2 years ago. Zen Match was there with tiles, but the game wasn't so big. But we knew there was an opportunity there because we knew the retention metrics were really good. We're seeing it on our side. The game was a bit on the edge, but we invested actually some time and resources in the game because we felt that there could be an opportunity to get there. And usually we see one sign, one metric that tells us that, hey, there's something to be done there. And for example, in this game, it was like data retention was like double or triple anything we saw on any game we had in the portfolio. So even if the game was not really performing on the other metrics, there was something special about it that actually was getting it to work. So I think you really need to have something special, both on the market opportunity and in the metrics, seeing something that stands out and really tells you that there is something that actually attracts players and keeps them, engaged. And so we should really double down on this.
So to summarize it, if I'm a developer of this Northern studio, I would focus on 3 things. Number 1 is quality of the software, because that's the first step.
Yeah, exactly.
Number 2 is creativity, doing something that is different, that is going to stand out in the market, and that's going to lead to all positive metrics as well as in belief.
That basically, stands a chance to succeed.
Exactly. And then the third part is having variety in the gameplay, because you're not making games anymore that are for 7 days, but for 3 days.
Exactly.
For 3 years. And that means that you have to evolve. Like in puzzle games, you have all these features coming in. It's like, what are the features that are going to evolve this gameplay with 80 different iterations? Like, can you really find involvement into the core gameplay that we can build on top of?
This is really important, actually. That's a super important point, because we need to think about how do we keep people interested in the game in the future. And that comes with, as you were saying, gameplay variety. So in the core gameplay itself. So always think about, what could be level 500. And actually, when we discuss the game idea with the studio, that's the way it is. I mean, in puzzle, at least, that's the way you think about it. In mid-core, it's more around how do we create a social layer for the people to actually compete and come back to the game, because they actually define a reason to come back, which is usually the competitive layer that you will find on top of the game. So really not focusing only on the core gameplay, that's kind of a gimmick that's going to be here for 7 days, but really how do you keep people engaged in puzzle through a variety of content in mid-core through this added social layer for extra competition and actually keep people in there. And that needs to be part of the vision.
And how long does it take studio typically? A good studio? I know it's very different because it's a creative process.
1 month.
1 month. 1 month
for the initial proto. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say usually the good studios always have a backlog of ideas that have been green lighted with us, discussed, and that they already started thinking about and designing while they're working on another game.
So first week is a concept phase. Basically, at the end of the concept, we have a first version of it. Then 3 to 4 weeks, we make it into a prototype. Then a little bit more time if the prototypes go through to create more levels and more variety. Then we go to a test. Okay, now we've done the test. Test comes back positive, and you want to move forward from the phase of engagement and CPI.
Yeah.
Where are we going now?
So where do we go now? First, we take the decision, as we discussed. Do we iterate on the game or do we kill it? We kill like 90% of the time. So 90% of the time you kill and you move to the next one. If we decide to actually iterate on the game, then actually the main focus at this stage is to work on the retention. So the game is still not in soft launch. It's still what we call the iteration phase. So it's still under the radar, on the developer account, and we're still building the vision together. And really here we're trying to focus on, as I was saying, day 7, day 14, and day 30 retention. These are going to be the things. No monetization, no meta feature, or at least no big meta feature. It's going to be pretty basic stuff. Really trying to nail these retention metrics with the game itself. This is usually going to take 2 months on top of the first, 4 to 6 weeks. 2 months where basically we test builds every 2 or 3 weeks. Really trying to get to these retention metrics. And then the publishing manager is going to spend more time on the game with the studio to help him on the product roadmap to get to these metrics.
Okay, got it. So iteration phase, couple of months. Let's say now my studio exceeds that day 30 of 10%, comes in at 11 finally after multiple different builds and sleepless nights. What are we doing next?
So once we're happy actually with the game and the metrics, we then move to soft launch. And that's when we exercise the license in the game based on the agreements we have with the studio. We transfer the game over to the Voodoo account. And, we focus for like the next 3 to 6 months on building a game that can become scalable through short sprints and extensive, A/B testing.
And you mentioned day 30 of above 20%. That makes sense. You talked about ROAS, both using in-app ads and in-app purchases. So what is the typical ROAS, like 100%? Is it 30 days or like what are you targeting for?
So it changes quite a lot. I mean, initially the ROAS is pretty low also because the thing is, as I was saying, we don't put interstitials at the beginning of the soft launch. That's actually new from this year because we really want to test the game without any bias towards ads and any bias towards lower conversion, because we really want to build, as I was saying, for the future. That's the key. In terms of ROAS, historically the ROAS we've always been targeting is 150% day 120. So that's actually pretty short. So meaning we're looking for profitability within 4 months, which is pretty fast compared to the industry. And most of the games that we have at scale, if not all the games actually, manage to actually meet these requirements. We're kind of changing the approach as we're moving towards more casual titles, but still focusing on profitability, right? So we're building a model to actually have a prediction after 2 years. And the idea is to be between 200 and 300% ROAS after 2 years. But early on, we still want to focus on day 120 ROAS. So I would say it's more for games at scale. We will think about long-term profitability. But for these games early, our belief is that a good game, when it's new and it's innovative and it's actually new to the market, should be profitable within a short time frame. Otherwise, when you scale it, it's never going to work. And that's key to us, and we really think that's important.
Can you talk about the evolution of monetization? Because of course, like hybrid casual, meaning that you're now more and more focused on in-app purchases.
Yeah.
What I'm especially curious to understand, like correct me if I'm wrong, but the better your retention is, the more you show ads to a user, the less valuable those ads become. So you have to, since you're targeting like these type of retention metrics, you really have to monetize through in-app purchases.
Web stores. You've seen what good looks like, but have you seen great? AppCharge is the direct-to-consumer platform backed by the likes of Supercell and built by monetization pros from Moonactive, Playtika, huge games, and others. People who know the difference. AppCharge powers over $500 million in transactions a year for top studios, optimizing every detail. Deeply personalized web store offers custom-made design, industry-leading monetization features, in-game payments, SDK, and more. 70% of top-grossing games already have a web store, but the ones scaling fastest, they're doing it with AppCharge. Learn more at appcharge.com.
So that's a good question, because the thing is, historically, Voodoo, and I would say hyper casual industry and the guys that actually move from hyper casual to hybrid and casual, we rely heavily on ads, and we've been known for this, particularly interstitials, for revenue generation, accounting for it used to be 99% of the revenue coming from ads in the hyper casual days. But the thing is that, with the ATC policy, obviously everyone had to change towards in-app purchase to increase, this kind of user lifetime value and maintain the scalability of the game over time. And while ads actually remain, a valuable tool for monetizing the non-paying users, as you're saying, we really need to focus on the in-app conversion early on, and that's why actually we don't put these interstitials initially to not skew, the conversion data in the games. So initially, we really try to work on, in-app purchase and rewarded videos to try to see what the ROAS could be and what the retention could be on the game without these interstitials. And then before actually moving to soft launch, that's when we'll introduce the interstitials in the game, maybe segmenting them based on the fact that a guy is a payer or non-payer, where he comes from on the campaign, to really try to monetize everyone. Because at the end of the day, that's really what we're trying to do, is really trying to monetize all the players that are in the game. And I think, honestly, that's a shift that the whole industry is doing. Not only the guys that actually come from hyper casual or hybrid. When you look at the casual players as well, I was playing a bunch of Travel Town, for example, last week.
Yeah.
You have a bunch of rewarded ads in Travel Town. And I'm not sure we can say Moon Active comes from hyper casual. So, and all the games actually are moving towards that. And I think, we're kind of converging towards this hybrid monetization model between in-apps and ads. And I think hybrid is mostly, a strategy to monetize more than the type of game itself. And everyone is actually converging towards that hybrid monetization model.
Yeah. Yeah, even even talking about hybrid, hyper. I mean, hyper was different because it was a different business model.
Hyper is different, but hyper is not there anymore.
Exactly. And now we're talking about hybrid monetization. We're almost talking about casual games by now.
Exactly, yeah.
You just have a much more efficient, not efficiency is actually a weird word to use because you kill so many games. You just have a high volume publishing model where you really separate the hits through data that comes from hyper casual background. But other than that, you're making casual games.
Yeah, I think honestly with the casual companies, we're going to the destination is the same.
Yeah.
It's just a way to get there, which is very different. So on our side, it's going to be volume led. So we test, a bunch of concepts that haven't been seen before in the market, at least in the mobile market, with very lean teams, and we expand the size of the teams as the games get promising. So it's kind of a inverted funnel, right? So funnel for the games, but inverted for the number of people we actually put on the games. On their side, they actually start with a very big team from the get-go and work on a game for years to actually get there. But at the end of the road, honestly, it's kind of the same games that we're going for. It's games that can retain people for a very long time, that can monetize mostly on in-apps, which accounts for more than 50% of the revenue of most of the hybrid players today, as we call them. But also on ads as a complement to basically monetize everyone that gets in a game.
But the end scenario is a little bit different because a casual games company targets a game that makes hundreds of millions, and you target several games that make hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
So the sum is the same, but you try to have multiple different games, or a handful of games that get the same number rather than one game that gets that number.
The goal is really to go into making multiple games, but each game should be able to compete on its own with the casual leaders in this specific segment.
And is this a sort of almost like a new strategy that comes because your funnel stays the same. Like it's a lot of different tries. You are very, very meticulous in how do you resource the teams.
Yeah.
They have to hit a lot of metrics. But once you see that the game is on the growth path, let's say $100 million a year, that's a huge success for anybody, especially in the current market. But at that point, there's no resource limitations. You're like, whatever it takes. If it goes up to $1 billion, we have to staff up a team of 85 people on it, 125. We need to build an IP for it. Sure, it all makes sense because we want this to be a next Candy Crush or whatever you want to use, or a Kingdom match.
This is what we do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no resource limitation.
Interesting.
It's actually the opposite. Like when a game shows really strong promises, we tend to invest in the game heavily in order to actually grow it. And I think that's really what changed over the past 2 years, I would say. So, past 4 years, we moved from happy casual to hybrid. We tried to stay lean, bring these kind of games to the level where they're at today. Now we know how to do it. The business really turned around. We have some really good games. We're growing. Now the key is how do we move to the next step, right? And to the next stage. And the next stage is actually building these casual games that actually compete and become leaders on the market, competing against, casual titles that have been there for years. And the way to get there is actually to invest heavily into the resources on the games. But actually, as you were saying, staffing 80, 100, 200 people on the games. I mean, the biggest games we have right now have like 35 people on them, but they have a plan to grow to 50 this year. Even more if it's needed. So we really try to invest ahead of the results of the games, I would say. And then after a year or two, we see where it gets, and then we make a decision of like, okay, should we actually scale down the team, or should we keep, scaling it up in order to actually build a big game?
How do you work with developers? Like you explain how you work with developers, but let's talk about how do you structure your partnerships, because the devil is in the details.
Yeah.
And like my own personal experience working with third-party developers and then seeing on the side of what can happen, the almost the most difficult case is when the game succeeds and becomes big, because then you start arguing about the thing that people argue the most, which is money.
And who's responsible for the success of the game?
And the developer doesn't see the work that you're doing. Like, I mean, they see part of it, but they don't see the actual publishing side, how much investments go this. And then they want to have more money now rather than less risk taking, because they are a small studio. You can have multiple different hits. You can invest a lot of money. And if it doesn't pay out in the end, well, at least you try, but you have 20 other games that are currently scaling. For them, this is the only game they're scaling. They've been trying with you 3 years. They want to get paid for it. So anyway, there's a lot of like challenges that comes. How do you solve that? Do you acquire the studio? Do you acquire the asset? Do you do OPEX plus? Do you do the revenue share? Tell me about the partnership deals.
So let's start at the beginning, right? How do we find a studio? So we hunt the studios. We tell them how great it is to actually work with Voodoo, how great we are at actually launching games and making, franchises and iconic games and everything. But these guys, they need to pay the bills at the end of the month, right? Before they actually have it. So first, we actually provide financial support to the studios. We usually don't cover the whole burn rate because we want to share the risk. And as I was saying before, we still want the studios to be hungry and actually have this kind of entrepreneur mindset to make the next big game. But we do cover actually some of it against the delivery of prototypes. Usually, these are monthly fees. We don't really like to go on, a paper prototype model, because we don't want these guys to just create a kind of prototyping factory and just like ship shitty games to the market. We want the games to be, the right ones with the right amount of work put into it and efforts, and really the kind of quality and game feel we're looking for. As we're saying, the guys need to love their game, not only do the games to actually pay the bills at the end of the month. Once we have a game that actually is promising, that's when we actually move to the publishing agreement. So, right, 2 contracts. One is actually for prototyping. The other one is for publishing. And so publishing, usually the way we structure the contracts are kind of standard, revenue shares that provide, full transparency to studios, but also reflects the involvement we take in the game and how much resources we actually invest in this game. And that's where the revenue share at Voodoo is going to be different potentially from the other publishers, is that usually it's lower revenue share that we bring to the studios, that actually decreases over time as we invest more resources. But all the terms are agreed upfront, right? So we don't change the terms throughout the contract. We can't, because actually there's a contract that's signed by both parties, so you can't change it like this, It's something that's initially agreed and that actually will stay throughout the life of the studio. But the reason why actually this is decreasing at a certain point is because if the game becomes big, we staff a team on the project, and the original studio doesn't have any involvement anymore in the game. So they just see the royalties coming in.
Nice. Passive income.
Yeah, it's passive income, exactly. And actually, we have the live studios working on the game. So you take Mob Control, you take Block Jam, you take even Paper 2 now, like you take Monster Survivors. So, most of the games that actually we launched over the past years, if not all of them, have a live studio staffed on it, which is internal to Voodoo and doing everything on the game, from regular SDK updates, which are pretty basic, but also to like incremental upgrades with like features and trying to lift, LTV, retention, and all the metrics to be able to scale the game further than it is right now. So that's the way it's going to work. We need to be able to basically invest resources in the game to actually grow it. And I think that's what the contract reflects. And it's a win-win situation, actually, for us and the studios, because we usually provide the highest payouts to the studios because our games are the biggest in the market, at least margin-wise. So we scale the games profitably. We give back some of the profits to the studios, and this is reflected in the payouts that actually we get at the end of the day.
Game devs. Here at Heroic Labs, we know that great gameplay is what players love, but integrating metagame features like challenges, progression, and rewards is crucial for retention and monetization. But coding them is a tedious and time-consuming process. That's why top studios have turned to Hero from Heroic Labs. Hero provides a complete suite of battle-tested metagame features that are quick to implement, letting you spend more time on the core gameplay experience. Ready to ship fully featured, engaging games? Check out Hero today at heroiclabs.com.
What's the biggest misconception that people have about how Voodoo works with external studios?
I think the main one is that they would see us as clients more than partners. As you were saying, with this model of like OPEX plus or OPEX minus, the thing is that when you're paying OPEX plus and you prototype for a publisher, the publisher is basically your client, right? So it's a bit like an outsourcing company. You're just building prototype and the guy is paying at the end of the month, and that's it. And he's making all the shots on what you should do. On our side, we really don't see it this way. And we really firmly believe that the studios are partners with Voodoo and that we're both partners. Our objectives are the same. Honestly, at the end of the day, we're an independent company. We're not owned by a larger corporation or anything. So we need to make profit. And the games are, the main business of Voodoo. And this is actually where we need to make money. And these guys, if they're on a rev share with us, if we end up making profit, they also will be making profit. So they really need to see that the objectives are exactly the same, which is making as much margin on the game for as long as possible in the future. So really, I think the misconception is seeing us as clients more than partners. And I think, there's always a debate around whether or not it's useful to work with the publisher. And I think one of the misconceptions as well that the small studios might have is that they can do everything by themselves. I think this is not completely true. And I think for small teams, honestly, it's become very complex to launch games on mobile. And you need to get some kind of an unfair advantage somewhere. And the publishers, and mostly Voodoo actually, bring to the table that unfair advantage that you can get. And there are several ways to see it. First, you get access to trends early on, because as we test 2,000 games per year, usually not doing copycats, we see the trends before they actually get in the top charts. And so we can share these with the studios. And I think that's pretty cool for them because they're able to actually get access to more data and more information that they would get on their own. You get access to world-class growth engine that's actually been built to sustain multiple games, not only one game. So for us, it's really easy to plug in a game and just launch it. All of the tools have been built to scale the games and do CREA, do UA, do add monet playables, whatever, for multiple games. And so we're really able to do this fast and very efficiently and very well. And last but not least, these studios are usually really creative and really good at finding a good concept initially, but they might be missing, the product expertise to operate a game at scale and make it into a game that has the chance to compete, as we were saying, with the biggest casual titles out there. And so we can bring in, these people and this expertise to actually create, top-notch, retention and monetization in these games. So I think this is really how we should do it, how we should see it. Not clients, partners, and partners because we share the same objectives, and we bring to the table a lot to the studios in order to make them successful.
That's a really good answer. Actually, I was thinking about what are the common mistakes that developers do when they try to build a hit game. And I think the first one that you mentioned, seeing publisher as a client, might be the biggest mistake, because now you're optimizing against what you think should be done, or what an individual publishing manager, individual person might think is the most important thing, rather than being a game creator. It's like, I think this is the best thing. I'm thinking about the player. I'm thinking about what can stand out, but now I'm only thinking about a guy at Voodoo in Paris who's giving me feedback.
Yeah, we need to have a chat. It's the best studios, they speak on a daily basis with their publishing manager, and they really think about what's good for the player. And I think that's really what changed as well, and compared to the hyper casual days. As I was saying, quality was pretty secondary back in the days. Now we need to think about the whole experience, right? We need to think about how the game should be for the players. And so usually the developers are going to think this way, because these guys, they bring the passion, they bring the know-how, and they bring the vision they will have in their game. But what we will bring to them is the ability to think differently and see things differently. And I would say the common mistakes are, first, developers tend to think small. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but they will actually try to follow trends that exist, and you will never be a leader by actually following a trend that's already in the market. Second, they tend to want to build a game for themselves. And that's, I think, something we see a lot, which is developers building super hardcore games that actually are good just for hardcore players and not for mass market mobile players. And last but not least, I think iterating is a big point. I think you shouldn't iterate too much on a game. And we bring this kind of challenge to the developer of you have this game, it has these kind of stats. This is how it compares to all the games we tested in the past with similar mechanics, similar theme, for example. And then none of them worked. And even if we look at the industry, none of them worked. So, you shouldn't spend too much time on it. Actually move to something else. And so we also push them. It's a bit like we're a bit like consultants to these guys towards the next opportunity and towards a new way to actually build the next big game for them. Because usually they will spend 6 to 12 months on a game that's going to end up making a bit of margin. Okay, it's making, I don't know, 20K per month. That's okay. I'm going to try to optimize it. Maybe you're going to make 23, 24K per month. But all of this time you actually spend in this game, it's not time that you've spent on a game that could be making millions per month, obviously. And I think this is where we come in, and we're trying to refocus them on the important thing for us. Obviously, we think about ourselves, but also for them, because as I was saying, our incentives are completely aligned at the end of the day.
I think that's really what separates you and a few other publishers from everybody else in the market, is your ability to kill games at such a volume, and how difficult it is to kill a game at almost any other company. It is.
But even internally, we see it. Honestly, in my teams, people get passionate about the product.
Yeah.
The publishing managers, they work with studios, and killing a game that they really believed in initially it's super hard for them because that's like, it's like their baby. So
Yeah.
we really need to, I need to look at the games myself and go like, hey, man, like this is just not gonna work. We've tested this like hundreds of times. I've seen these stats thousands of times. It never clicked. It never converted. We tried to launch these games. It never worked. So move on to something else. And I think that's really what sets us apart, as you were saying, from the rest of the industry, which is we take a very cold and rational look at the game and think we should kill it. And that's the culture of the company revolves around this, actually.
But it's not easy still. That's
not
the
easy.
thing that you said. That's why I appreciate it so much, because you're doing the difficult thing over and over and over again, like over 1,000 times or almost 2,000 times a year. And what's most interesting is the studios are also killing their own babies, but they're not killing their passion. They're not killing their enthusiasm. They're not killing their drive. They're just killing this one thing that they thought would be the next big thing, only to work on the next thing that's going to be the big thing, and killing that again and working on the next. So it's like that passion never dies, even if you kill the game.
And we make mistakes sometimes. Like let's face it, sometimes we kill, and we shouldn't kill. And we see games in the charts that actually start going up.
Yeah.
We had this game like 6 months ago. So this happens pretty often.
Yeah.
But we need to take a stance. We need to take a position. We need to have opinions on the games. That's very important. We're very much involved in the product. We're very much involved in the vision and where it can go. And so we have strong opinions about the games and what we think has a chance to work and doesn't have a chance to work. And we admit it, sometimes we're wrong. And actually we learn from these mistakes. That's super important.
All right, Thibault, I have 3 questions to take it off. These are short ones. So what's your advice to break into Voodoo's ecosystem for a studio?
I would say, first of all, you need to refocus on the basics. Like based on everything we said until this point, you really need to be amazing at executing your core gameplay. And really be looking for innovation. So look for innovation. That's basic stuff, but you shouldn't forget about it. And build an amazing core gameplay that's amazingly executed. And I think that's super important. And that's the first thing. And then you need to be able to work with the approach, and you need to accept the fact that we killed games. So coming back to the previous question, really you shouldn't spend too much time on a concept that doesn't show great promises, because that's really what's gonna hurt you in the long run, because you will be missing these games, and actually all of these games you have in the backlog will be taken over by someone else. We're not sharing these concepts with other people, but just people have the same kind of stimulus for ideation, and so the concept, someone else will find it, and this can become the big game. So really don't spend too much time. So I think speed, innovation, and quality are the key. And if you manage to actually get these 3 all together, you have a shot at making it, and you really have a shot at actually breaking into our ecosystem and actually building a successful collaboration with us.
And a game that has a variety in its core gameplay.
Exactly.
Super important. Okay, second question is, let's say a studio is that type of a thing, a type of a studio that finds themselves in the ecosystem and finds making a successful game. What's the carrot? Meaning, like, how much can a studio earn in a positive case working with Voodoo?
Millions, for sure. Millions for sure.
That's a healthy carrot for a really hungry team.
That's pretty good.
Okay. And small enough carrot to maybe earn a couple more of those.
Yeah. So that's a good number.
Okay. Last thing, what excites you about the industry right now the most?
I think it's the ability of a player like Voodoo to really become a leader in the top grossing charts and really come to compete against the incumbents. We started doing it. We moved away from hap casual, and I think the way we work and the methodology we use to actually launch games and allow smaller studios to actually come and compete with giants and incumbents is really powerful and is really the way to go to actually succeed. And I think in the next few years we'll take the industry by storm and basically come and compete, if not beat actually these bigger players.
So Voodoo games on top of the grossing charts in the coming years.
that's what we're pushing for, and that's actually what we aim for. That's really the goal, is to build franchises, iconic games that can really be at the top of these charts and really come and beat and surpass all of these incumbents and players that have been there for years.
And you know what? That's not a crazy idea, because that's been done before. Merged Dragons, Gram Games, single person made that. They acquired the game, launched it, scaled it, one of the biggest games.
It's pretty big now. Well,
but you're gonna do many of those.
Yeah, many. That's the thing. Like we really want to build a portfolio of products. It's not one game, and we want to keep this approach of testing fast, small teams, and then growing if the opportunity is here, but always thinking about what's next. We're never going to put all our eggs in the same basket. That's not the culture. It's really about building as many big games as possible, not limiting ourselves, and really killing it.
Excited to play future Voodoo franchises. Thank you, Wolfo.
Thanks.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you'd subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. Those stars and likes, while a small action on your part, mean a lot to us and help to grow the show. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand, or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.